Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here. Mr. Raj Sharma, Professor Raji Kurvilla, Professor Anil Sahasrabudhe. And I'm so glad that we had an opportunity to listen to Professor Raji Kurvilla and Professor Anil Sahasrabudhe. And they've covered really all of what needs to be said and what I could have said and much more. So I really don't have anything to add. Let me just say, therefore, a few broad brush sentences about AI and robotics going forward. Now, if you look at AI, what are the kinds of challenges and what are the problems which we're likely to face? Now, AI has its origins in a 1950 paper by Alan Turing on whether machines can think. This was in the Journal of Computing Machinery. It's a 2-page paper, very simple, just 2 references, and it outlines what the challenges are in getting machines to think. Soon after and around that time, we had in place algorithms which allow us to use AI and machine learning, but those could not be used on the scale we are seeing today because computational power, both memory and speed, were not available. With the development of those, and for reasons which we are not entirely clear about, these algorithms work superbly and AI and machine learning proceeds at the pace we're seeing. So there's a great need for a theoretical understanding and developing new kinds of algorithms. That has not really changed substantially over time, but the opportunities for that now are enormous, along the lines of what we heard about how machines themselves can be used to develop these kinds of algorithms. Now with AI, the fundamental challenges are of 2 kinds. One, the availability of data. Now we must remember that data is not information. It needs to be annotated, collated properly, and that can be done by machines or by humans. But data collection is very, very important. I'll come back to that in a little bit. So data needs to be converted to information, information to knowledge, knowledge to understanding, understanding to reasoned decision making. And quite often at these levels, the machine-human interface is critically important still. In other words, AI still is narrow artificial intelligence, which can be used very precisely in certain narrow contexts, but general artificial intelligence is still a very, very long way away, if at all, and human interventions constantly are important. And therefore, human domain understanding, whether you're a doctor or an agriculturist or an educationist and so on, is critically important to make sense of AI. In other words, big data and artificial intelligence and machine learning are necessary but not sufficient. And there is a great danger in assuming that the mere analysis of data and predicting what the next step will be is sufficient, and you don't need hypotheses and ideas. It couldn't be further from the truth. It allows and liberates you from having constrained by the lack of availability of data, but hypotheses and ideas will become more and more important. Now that brings us to the next point about training. Because AI drives decision making so much in today's world, and people of course bring in hypotheses and ideas, these tools of AIs will not just tell you how to go from one location to another in the fastest or shortest route, but will also start telling you about every aspect of your life, your health, what college you should go to, how you should study, how you should make friends, and so on and so forth. And by and large, they'll be right. Now this is a great disempowerment. This means big tech and big companies will have control over everything you do, and it raises philosophical questions about free will, because you're getting information about how you should behave and what you should do, which is good advice. Should you not be listening to it? Why should you do something different from that? But this then disempowers you because you are not in charge of your decision making. It is some other sets of instruments which are in charge of your decision making about your life. Now, what is the way out of this? the way out of this is not to say that there should be no AI or no machine learning, quite the opposite. These tools are very important. But each individual needs to be empowered to be able to use these tools in a distributed manner so that they exercise also control and judgment over AI in a way which they wish. I mean, you need to have that control, otherwise you're going to go into a very dystopian world. But more importantly, the asymmetry of power will mean that the technologies of AI will be concentrated in a few big companies and they will be controlling the world in a manner as never before. So therefore, distributed learning and use of AI and possession of AI is very, very important. Now that brings us to the next point, which we heard so beautifully expounded by both Raji and Dr. Sahasrabuddhe, which is about language. Now, the great other disempowerment which has gone on is the dominance of the English-speaking world in decision-making in India. The knowledge and use of English in learning science, technology, or any other subject, requiring English as the basis, is a peculiarity of India. In China, everything is learnt in Chinese and people are bilingual. In Holland, people learn in Dutch and in English. In Sweden, they learn in Swedish and in English. In Japan, they learn in Japanese and in English. So unless bilingual education is available in every possible way, you will be extraordinary imitators, but you will not emulate the best and become better than the best. And if you must have the power of abstraction, you must have the rootedness in your language and culture. And therefore, it is critically important that organizations like the AICTE, the Ministry of Education, MIT, working with entrepreneurs, make sure that every possible text which you need is available bilingually. You can read it in your own language, you can read it also in English. Whether it is a legal text, whether it is signage, whether it is, Kalidasa or Shakespeare or Tolstoy, they should be available bilingually. Then you have the power of creativity and abstraction in a manner which is distinct from functionality. So currently the translational tools provide you enormous functionality, which is very valuable. But it doesn't tell you in each domain, whether it is in mechanical engineering or algebraic geometry, the power of abstraction. So language is another key empowering tool which will very rapidly, thankfully, be in place, but needs to go forth with great speed. Finally, let's connect computers and AI and language to the reality around us: soil, water, rain, and so on. And that brings us to the Internet of Things and how telecommunication and IT is changing, and how 5G technologies and further technologies will change things. All of this, the sensors and the components of IoT which are involved, are imported today. So we need an enormous investment in our engineering, small-scale industry, medium industry, so that these kinds of technologies, many of which actually don't require high-end electronics, some of them do, some of them don't, many of them don't, needs to be put in place over here. Otherwise, we will be, just like we import displays in an enormous way, semiconductors in an enormous way, sensors and IoT will be imported in an enormous way. This is not a way by which a large country can function. If the name of our country were Liechtenstein, that's perfectly okay. But the name of our country is India. And therefore, we must have a large number of people actually doing things and manufacturing. So the link between IT and manufacturing, this cyber physical world needs to be pushed in a big way. And it's not just the government, industry has to be innovative over here. Now, I'll end by saying that there are great liberalizing tendencies which have, points which have come in place. The remote sensing policy has been changed dramatically and made flexible. There's a space policy which is on the anvil, which will similarly liberalize access to space data. The geospatial policy has been completely liberalized, and the drone policy has been completely liberalized. So therefore, there's a market for IoT and data which will stimulate learning and teaching also. So with these tools and these challenges, there's an enormous amount of things which we need to do. And I'm sure that all of you, as well as all of the ecosystem working together will get that done. Thank you very much.